So as Ian stated, I'm Alisha Bailey. So kind of put together like a little collage here. So it's kind of just like my journey. So I have a bachelor's in chemistry from Spelman. I have a master's in environmental science from Alabama A&M University. I have around 10 years of experience. I first started off my work experience as a middle school mathematics teacher. I knew that wasn't where I was going to stay. And so I then went back to school to get my master's in environmental sciences. And from there, I studied in Nanjing, China, did some research, had some publications, and was really just on a journey of just finding and doing things that really spoke to me and what I wanted to do. I am a first generation college student. So I often don't tell people that, but I feel like in this room, it's really relevant for people to know that, for you guys to know that. I'm a first generation college student. So I was first in my family to go to college. And then now having a master's degree, and I'm also working on a second master's degree. I feel like that's really relevant for y'all to know. Fun fact about me, I was a ballerina when I was a lot younger, and so I was in the Moscow Ballet, Great Russian Nutcracker, and so I was the head minion mouse. So what we'll kind of just go through today, this is my introduction. I'll talk about my why and how you can determine your why it's important to build your community, having perseverance, and then exploring paths that really work for you. So knowing your why. So why did I choose the major that I chose? So I went into school wanting to be pre-med. I was chemistry pre-med major. And so through high school, I did all these internships. I worked at a hospital. I was so set on being pre-med and becoming a doctor. I wanted to be a pediatrician. And so I ended up taking my very first environmental science class my junior year of college. I was just like, this is it. Like I knew that was what I wanted to do. And so I was too far along in my chemistry process to switch. And so I knew I was going to get a master's in environmental science. Right. And so that's how I chose that path. And so for me, I wanted to make sure whatever I was doing was for myself and not for anybody else. So as a first generation college student, I don't know, are any of y'all in here first generation college students? Yep, quite a few, right? So a lot of times, what about are any of y'all oldest children? Oldest, yep. So a lot of times when you're first generation or you're the oldest, there may be a certain amount of pressure, either spoken or unspoken, on you that you have to succeed or do a certain type or perform a certain kind of way, right? And a lot of times, like being a first generation college student, our parents only know one thing, right? Doctor, lawyer, teacher, right? That's what they know, right? And so I had to make sure the major that I was choosing was something that I was passionate about and something that I knew that I wanted to do long term. And so I was seeking out internships. I was talking to my professors, and I really took the initiative. Like I went far from home to go to college on purpose. So I'm originally from Louisiana. I got into school at TCU, and I also got into school at Spelman and Xavier, which is in South Louisiana. And so my parents just knew I was going to go to TCU, which was only 3.5 hours for them. For me, I knew I wanted to make the journey and go to Spelman, which was in Atlanta, Georgia, which was around 10 to 11 hours from my family because I knew I needed that growth for myself. Right. And so these are just choices that I decided to make for myself and not having anyone else at the forefront there. One thing that's always been at the forefront for me is also like service. I've always had a heart of service and really volunteering and being in my community. That's something that's really important for me, and I keep that at the forefront now. I put two organizations that I volunteer with now, which are Junior League and the Gens Camp. And so the mission really ties to me, right? So GEMS Camp is it's an acronym for Girls Interested in Engineering, Math, and Science. So that's something that I really didn't see a lot of growing up, and that's something that I really want to continue to be involved in and work with girls. So those girls are in middle school through high school, and work with those girls in that capacity. And so Junior League, of course, is a service. We provide a lot of service. So out in the community. So you might see it on the news or on LinkedIn or so we do a lot of service. And so I'm actually on the DIB, which is Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee. And so that's also something that really sits near and dear to my heart as well. And then one of the last things I want to talk through here on this slide about knowing your why is about your passions and gifts. So one gift that I know that I have is a gift of leadership and a gift of teaching others. So that's something I know some folks were raising here as being the oldest child, right? So as the oldest, you a lot of times you have to lead, right? And so a lot of times people may try to stray you away from that. It's like you have to follow in certain capacities. But if it's a gift that you have to know how to manage that well. And that's something that I have learned throughout my journey of being able to manage that leadership gift well and being able to lead others and mentor others in a way that they can really be able to take. And so also teaching. I love teaching. And so I was a teacher at one point in a more formal capacity, but I really love teaching in a more informal capacity. Like if people are able to glean something from what I've said or what I've done, that's a form of teaching as well. And so that's something that I really love doing. To just tell you guys is like what's important of like building your community. So things that have been important for me is like my faith. I keep my faith at the very forefront. So whatever that looks like for you, make sure you have that at the forefront of whatever it is that you're doing throughout your journey. I've really been able to build my community by attending some conferences. So these are a couple conferences when I was in graduate school as well as undergrad as well, because they were really relevant to the environmental science field. And so I was able to really network there. And so going into like internships, a lot of times it's not who you know, it's not what you know, it's who you know, right? One thing that I remember our career center telling us at Spelman is it's who you know and who knows what about you. So if I was able to get internships at Emory University when I was in undergrad, and it was only because I was able to network with people. They knew that, hey, I had taken these classes, but so is everybody else. But I was able to network, talk to people, go to conferences, and actually tell them why I wanted to be a part of their lab or why I wanted to be an intern here in their lab. So I would really encourage y'all to make sure that you are talking to people, network, taking those opportunities, going into your professors' classrooms, asking them if they have any other lab work or assignments, or just because they may know someone that they can connect you with someone that may know something or do something that you might want to do in the future. And so I kind of talked through community service a little bit earlier. And so also I want to talk about peer-to-peer. One thing that I really find relevant when I talk to students, because I work in higher education now in a different capacity, but they have told me how relevant it is when they talk to their peers. Make sure that you don't silo yourself. Make sure you talk to your peers, because they may see something on LinkedIn or they may hear of something that may be a great opportunity for you. It may be something that they want to pass for themselves. They may not want to do it, but it may be relevant for you. So make sure that you're connecting with your peers and talking to each other. That's such a high point. And so how many of y'all are commuting? Like this commuter campus, majority? Campus. Okay. So you have this unique opportunity because you guys leave, you don't stay on campus. You have to come here and then you go home. You have to really be really intentional to make sure that you are actually connecting with other people. So, hey, I see somebody in my class. They've been in the past 2 classes with me. Great opportunity for you guys to connect on schoolwork. You may have something in common, but you guys may also be able to build your network professionally, because it starts now. You don't start your professional network once you graduate. You want to start it now. So perseverance. So let's just kind of talk through some of that with you guys of how to kind of persevere. So I kind of put together this little collage of like, what has it been like for me to kind of grab hold and kind of build this confidence in STEM, right? So started off doing internships. And so I worked in secondary education. I've also worked in public health. So I was an environmental compliance specialist for the government for 3 years in Atlanta, Georgia. And then now I work in higher education, and I knew that my pathway would lead me toward leadership. And so with kind of all of these things that I've been able to kind of paste together, I've been able to take something from every single job or career that I've done to be able to lead me to the role that I'm doing now, right? And so I have to make sure that I am being very purposeful in things that I do. And so I encourage you guys to do the same thing. So if you're taking a course or you're doing an internship and you're like, I don't really see how this is relevant, there may be something down the line that you can pull from it that can really make a lot of sense for you later on. So for me, I did an internship at Emory University in their College of Arts and Sciences. And so it was in the chemistry department. And so I was like, this is not for me. I know I did not want to be a physical chemist, but I wouldn't have known that if I didn't take the internship. And if I didn't talk to other people that were doing things that were a little bit more relevant to what I wanted to do. And so going into the public health field, I really enjoyed my journey there, working in public health and being an environmental compliance specialist. How many of y'all have seen like the huge water towers, like that hold water? Yep. So that's the work that I did. So I was an environmental auditor. I did not climb the towers, thank God. But I had to hold other people accountable, right, for the work that they're doing and making sure that the water before it gets to like us, the general public, that it's safe. And so with that, when we talk about leadership, I had to really work with people that had been in their job for probably 35, 40 years, right? They had been in that same role since they were 18. And I come in as like fresh out of my master's program, bouncing along, like, telling them like, you should have this, your system should have this, checking to make sure that their chemical injection points in the correct place, looking at their clear wells, is doing all these technical detail type things, but also having to remember as my goal is focused on leadership, also having to remember that I have to be empathetic to where they are in their process as well. So I think that's a huge lesson that I really learned from specifically that role in working in public health. Other people may not have the same education background and level as you, but you have to be empathetic to them as you are working with them. So some things about exploring. So this is kind of like I said I don't want this session to be like a how-to, but this is probably going to be like a how-to or just some my opinion on how I can kind of lead you guys in this way. I would really encourage you to seek productive feedback. And when I say productive feedback, making sure you're going to someone that you really trust, that can give you some feedback that really can go a long way for you in the future. So what that can look like is going to a professor, going to a trusted adult, or someone that you are familiar with on campus. And they can really help you through, if it's an internship that you're looking for, a class that you're struggling with, they can provide you with that productive feedback that you need. I also encourage y'all to explore trainings and certifications. You're at the point where everything's at your fingertips, right? So because you're a student, because you have the .edu at the end of your email address, people are automatically want to help you. They want to offer you whatever training, whatever certifications you want to get. I would tell y'all to use that to your advantage. I tell my undergrad students that all the time. This is the time now to get all the training that you need, because you don't want to wait until you get out in the workforce and you're like, oh, wow, my school offered that for free and I didn't take advantage of it. Another thing that has really, really helped me is setting personal and professional goals. So I knew before graduating from college where I wanted to be in 5 years. And so, like I said, this is not a step-by-step. You don't have to do what I did, right? You may have a goal in the next 2 years, or yours may be just the next year. So I would just tell you, just plan some type of goal. One thing that works for me is I have a planner and I write things down that I want to accomplish within the next 6 months. And so I start checking those things off. When you're able to clearly see when you get it out of your head and you're able to clearly see your vision, it really helps you to be able to actually want to achieve it because you're holding yourself accountable in that way. Next is networking and connecting. I think we talked about that. I'm always connecting with people over LinkedIn, or if I'm going to an event, or if people just have maybe just like seen me somewhere. Every time I go into a meeting, someone's like, oh, I looked you up. What is that? Right? What does that mean? But always making sure that you're networking and connecting with people, because you never know where your next opportunity is going to come from, and you never know how you can help someone else, right? So I always kind of keep that at the forefront of like, how can I be of service to help somebody else? And that's why I like to network and connect with people. Another thing that I wanted to really point out here was understanding your values. Like, what are your core values? So, and one of the previous slides, I talked about my faith. That is my top core value. And so if there is a job or there's an event or there's something that's not going to align with that core value for me, then it's something that I know that I can't do, right? So my faith is a huge core value for me. And so is making sure that I have a level of accountability. That's my second core value is accountability. Not only holding myself accountable, but holding others accountable that I work with. And so if it's something that I can't do or I can't accomplish, and someone else says that they're going to do it and they don't accomplish it, that means somebody is dropping the ball there and there's a lack of accountability. So I would encourage you guys to make sure that you are really firm on your core values and what's going to really drive you to do whatever it is that you want to do in STEM. Another thing I'm going to point out here is just having a growth mindset. And that's going to be on the next slide. I'll talk through that. It's like always making sure that you are growing not only in your education, but growing personally as well. So for me, I have a goal of making sure with every 3 to 5 years, I'm learning a new skill. I'm learning a new professional skill. So either that's getting a certification, going back to school, sitting in a professional certificate class. It's something I'm making sure that I'm learning every 3 to 5 years, because your skills can become outdated and you don't want to run into that. So next slide. So I'm going to talk through here just more detail about some of the work that I've done in STEM and just how I've been able to kind of like build my confidence there and advance. So I worked for the Georgia Department of Natural Resources in the Environmental Protection Division. So I worked in public drinking water. I talked about that. So myself and 2 other of my colleagues, we oversaw 109 public water systems throughout the whole state of Georgia. So I was always on the road. I was driving everywhere to all of the different water systems throughout the county, throughout the state. And so part of my role was making sure I conducted sanitary surveys and compliance inspections. And so what that meant, it was just to make sure that before the water got to the public, it was safe. Like I said, I checked injection points. I made sure I walked through all of the water treatment plants and facilities. I actually had to talk and build relationships and talk to a lot of the water treatment operators to really build those relationships with them. Because a lot of times, sometimes when you go in and talking to people, they can be defensive, but you have to make sure that you are the person that is helping to build that relationship with them. I also worked at the State Operations Center, so for emergency support functions. So whenever there was a hurricane, so a lot of times when there's like hurricanes around the different states, or if it's the aftermath of the hurricane, I would be one of the people that would sit at the emergency support system, and I would offer assistance to any of the public drinking water systems. So if there was lighting that was out, if their clear well was down, that means they couldn't get water to people in the county. So I would have to make sure that I was the one at that at the operations center, making sure I'm taking all the information down. So this is another example of what I was saying, is taking all the opportunities that you have available, because that essentially wasn't really a part of my role, but it's something that I wanted to learn more about and do. So data reporting and monitoring. So I put a couple things up here about Safe Drinking Water Act, National Public Discharger, and PDES is what we called it. So all these things are really tied back to skills that you guys are already learning. So in Excel, if you're learning about statistics, so that's how I was able to really understand a lot of the data reporting and monitoring, because I had already gained some of those skills in college. And that's how I'm able to I was actually able to easily read a lot of the reporting and monitoring systems. And so one of the last things I did in that role was also like boil water notices. If y'all notice on the news, they'll say, hey, it's a boil water notice. Don't drink this water for X amount of days, or make sure if you do, you boil your water. And so before any of the counties or systems were able to exit out of their boil water notice, they would have to call my office for me to go over their lab work to make sure that it was all clear of any E. coli or bacteria, fecal matter, etc. So another part of my STEM journey, engineering journey, I worked in engineering education. So I was the program manager in our Lyle School of Engineering at SMU. And so I directed the engineering outreach camps. I developed some of the project-based curriculum. I collaborated with our community and our nonprofits. And I also analyzed a lot of the data, and I managed undergraduate students. And so parts of this journey are relaying the work. So a lot of the work that I did for the government when I worked before, I was able to use that to be able to build curriculum, like brand new curriculum from scratch in this role. So as I was telling you guys before, utilizing every single skill set and every single role that you've had, nothing is ever wasted. So because I had so much experience with GIS and as well as working for the government in a practical experience, I was able to put it here in a more theoretical experience for students and building curriculum. And they're able to like build this out. They were able to work on a smaller scale in their engineering outreach camps. Oh, another part of my journey, where have I lived? So I'm a person I consider myself pretty fearless. I don't mind taking risks. I don't mind getting up and moving if I need to for my job. Again, this is my journey, it doesn't have to be yours. um, so I live in Houston. I lived in Huntsville, Alabama, Atlanta, Georgia, and then now I'm here in Dallas, Texas. And so I am not afraid to really just seize the opportunity if it's available. And so I saw all of these cities that I've lived in as opportunities for me to continue my growth, my professional growth path, because I was so set in my mind that I needed to achieve and do what it is that I originally had set forth. And so that's why I chose to live in all these different places. Would that have been something my parents had chose for me? No. But when you talked about at the very beginning of making sure you know your why for yourself and you have your own passion at the forefront, that's why I was able to really do this for myself. Oh, we talked about skill set and making sure that you guys are taking advantage of the opportunities that are available to you. So one thing that I really push a lot of the undergraduate students that come through my office at SMU is to make sure that they are getting the Microsoft Office certifications. And I encourage you guys to do the same thing. When I talk to some of our alum students and they tell me, hey, like I never expected to be a data analysis or to be a business analysis, and now I'm having to utilize Excel in a way that I didn't realize I needed to use it before. Having a certificate really can go a long way for you because that's a skill set now that you already have that puts you ahead of other students. For me, because I was in the environmental science field, I decided to go ahead and take the 40-hour hazardous waste and emergency response or HAZWOPER. You may not have to do that depending on where you guys are deciding to end up in your STEM field and your STEM journey. Another place of relevancy for me was having a CPR, first aid, and AED certification. If you're working around people of any kind, especially if you're in the lab, I would highly suggest it because you never know what can happen. I always have put it on my resume when I've applied to other positions and roles, and it's something that people often look at depending on if you're going into a lab position or if you're going into like a science or STEM position or if you're working with people. ArcGIS has been something has carried me a long way. It's a skill set that I picked up when I studied abroad in Nanjing, China, and it has really carried me all the way through. It was a skill I didn't even realize that I needed, and I just accidentally decided to get that skill because that was the lab I was placed in when I studied abroad. And so, if that's something that you feel like you would need, then I would encourage you to also maybe look into it because ArcGIS has become, there's story maps with it. It's become pretty broad. If you look on it, how many of y'all watch the news? Probably nobody. Okay, one person. So if you're watching the weather, those are forms of ArcGIS that they're using to get the information out to you. So, um, statistics. So statistics, I'm probably in every single degree that I've had to take a statistics course. So that's a course that I would recommend. I would highly recommend to y'all because if you plan on getting an advanced degree of any kind, master's, PhD, that's something that you're gonna run into. If you have an interest in chemistry and chemistry monitoring, I would suggest for you guys to get the chemistry monitoring certification. They do offer it here in Texas. I got mine when I was in Alabama. They do offer it here in Texas as well. It is free. So you guys can just look it up online. And if it's something that you're interested in learning more about, they'll take you out to some of the local streams and they'll teach you how to actually monitor the water. And then you can click the link for study abroad. Maybe. There we go. Hey, there we go.
Get back here. There it is.
This is just a picture. You can just scroll down. Okay, so I'll just show you guys. So I studied abroad in 2016. So I was a college student. So a lot of opportunities that I really sought out were things that other people in my family had never done. So to go so far away from home, which people in my family were really, really worried, right? But I saw this as a relevant opportunity for myself. So I was able to work in a lab, learn new skills, learn ArcGIS, and also travel abroad completely for free on my school. So if it's something that you're interested in doing and like studying abroad, going to a new country, learning a new skill, I would also encourage y'all to like seek those opportunities out wherever that is on its campus that they have that available. For me in undergrad, when I was in undergrad, it was really difficult trying to graduate in 4 years, being a chemistry major to study abroad. So when I had the opportunity again, when I went to graduate school and that it presented itself, I went ahead and took it. So I encourage y'all to go ahead and just take the opportunity if it's available for you.
Did you want me to scroll further? Oh, got it.
Okay.
There we go.
So I wanted to leave y'all with a couple words of wisdom. We're also talking about seizing the opportunity. So I really love this quote from Simone Biles of don't wait until you've reached your goal to be proud of yourself. Be proud of every step you take toward reaching that goal. So I would encourage y'all to make sure that you are celebrating every single milestone that you have. If that's something that I could go back and do, I would make sure that I would do it. So I had a mindset of I wanted to get from goal A to Z as quickly as possible. But if I can go back and celebrate the little milestones that I had, I would. And so I would encourage y'all, if you're a first generation college student and you're first in your family to graduate, celebrate that. That's huge. If you are studying abroad or doing something, even if it's something small, if you just bought your first car, celebrate that milestone. So I would just encourage you to celebrate every small step that you have. Another quote that I really love is by Nelson Mandela, which education is the most powerful weapon in which you can use to change the world. So y'all are already here, y'all are already in the room, you're already educating yourself. So all you have to do now is seize all the opportunities that are available to you. So you're already taking the first step. So this is the point where if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask.
Also, for those online, you can put them in the chat. Just a minute for this to filter in. Yeah.
For you to some information here.
What's the scariest part about going to grad school or deciding on a program?
The scariest part. I would say I wouldn't say the scariest part, but I would say making sure that you are firm on your decision to go to graduate school. It's a big decision, and making sure that you understand the workload is a lot different than the workload as an undergraduate student.
Good question. Don't be shy. Yes.
You find it challenging. That was it. Feel like, okay, I'm gonna dedicate, this is the time to get go back into everything after being in not for. I understand your question completely. Yeah. I would definitely say it's a huge difference from when I got my first master's. I was a full-time student, I got my first master's. Working now and getting a second master's is completely different. I have to really balance my time. And I don't have a lot of time because I'm having to make sure that I'm studying appropriately, I'm in class or I'm at work. And so it is a delicate balance that I do have to make, but I will say it's doable.
You still feel like that pressure to do it as, like you were saying earlier, like as, like getting to that point as fast as possible? Or at this point, are you just kind of like, it'll happen?
No, I don't have this as fast as possible mentality, right? Because for me, how I've self-reflected over things is like I've done so much in a short period of time, right? So, and I've really checked off all of the major goals that I wanted to do anyway. So I'm at a point now of like doing something that I want to be completely certain. So this master's I'm doing now is in business administration. So I want to combine my first master's with the second master's and go into entrepreneurship. So there's a purpose behind what I'm doing. So I'm just trying to make sure that I am pacing myself. That's been the goal of like, I don't have to get there so quickly because I did everything else quickly. So now I can go at my own pace.
You have a few more questions. You've accomplished so much. What advice do you have to avoid burnout or developing imposter syndrome in grad school?
That's a great question. Avoiding burnout. One thing I would tell you all is to make sure that you are not afraid to rest. Rest is not like that doesn't mean that something's wrong with you. It means you're human, right? So I would tell you to actually rest. Whatever that looks like for you, if it's going to the spa day or just binging on your favorite show, like I would just tell you guys to rest. That's something that I, for myself, didn't feel like I did not do enough of when I was just going and going and going. But I can really encourage you guys to really just rest. The paper will still be there, the work will still be there. Rest. I What I think I can give you guys is when I was planning out all of our engineering outreach camps, that had to be done a whole bunch of planning because we see over almost 300 students over a course of 2 months or over a course of 7 weeks, really. And so I had already planned a trip to go, our family trip to go with my family, and we were right in the midst of planning. I trip because and someone asked me like, are you not afraid to like leave? Like, even though you're the lead and like you're managing all this, I was like, this work is going to be here when I get back. So, because I needed to go like take a mental break and rest. And so I would encourage y'all to like rest, take a mental break if you need to. It will still be there when you get back in the same exact condition. So,
Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit more about the water resources you mentioned earlier, such as the Water Watch chemistry thing that's from the South Plains group? Is that Texas Stream Team?
yes.
Okay.
Yes. I got mine through Alabama, but there is a Texas Drinking edition of it as well.
I also got a similar certificate back in undergrad, actually. Yeah. So yeah, we can provide some more of those resources as well. And this would be a great thing to connect with our speaker about as well. If there's anything more you'd like to add for that. What's a graduate school schedule like? And I would actually add an additional part to that question. What was it like the first time when you're a full-time graduate student, and what does the schedule look like now? And what's your second master's?
Okay. So my first schedule was getting my master's the first time I told you guys I was full-time student, but I also worked 2 jobs part-time. So I still kept busy. But my focus was making sure that I completed my thesis project. And so I had to split my time between class and then also being in the greenhouse. So focusing on like half of my time was focused on class schedules, which is 9 hours as a full-time student. And then the other half was making sure that I was getting my thesis out of the way. So for me, like I said, I was on like a time clock. And so I wanted to get in and out in 2 years, which was really abnormal for someone that was doing a thesis. It took most people around 3 years, but I was very focused on like whatever my goal was.
All right. So I know some folks are having a drop for getting to their next class. Before you do, I would just say, please check click on our QR link here. Go ahead and share that again. This is for our overall for the LSAMP program. And so we do have a few more minutes. If anybody has a few more questions, feel free to answer them and we'll keep going for a few more minutes. A few more have come in the chat as well. So, you had more answer, did you?
No.
Okay. For a very goal-oriented minded person, someone who skips from A to Z, what's a good approach to keep a reasonable pace?
So I would say my past life was an A to Z skipper. An A to Z skipper. I would definitely tell you to make sure that you have a plan. Like I said, I keep an agenda or a planner, and so I always write everything down. But I'm writing things down now for like 3 to 6 months out, not for 3 years or 5 years out. I think it's scaling it down can really help you make it more manageable.
And kind of the follow-up to that question, how were you able to find a good balance between school, work, family, etc.?
A good balance. I'm still finding a balance, right? So I think there is never a 50-50 balance, but you have to make sure that you keep whatever your core values, whatever your core goals are at the forefront. So for me, my faith and family are always going to come first, and everything else can follow afterwards. So I've really shifted a lot of my focus now.
Thank you. And I have a final question for you.
Sure.
So PhD question mark.
Question mark. That's the answer.
Question mark. Okay. I know, because we talked about that. All right. So unless anybody has any last questions, thank you so very much for everyone. If you need a copy of the link, it is available from your orientation. That's going to be the same survey link we're using all semester for things. Thank you so very much. And let's give our speaker a hand. Here we go. And let's see if I can make it. All right, stop sharing. There we go. All right. Thank you, everyone.